Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online Alicization anime review. This one's going to be for episode 45, which is called Beyond Time. So this was our primarily ocean turtle focused episode, which we knew we were going to get once Alice, her light cube, was ejected into the real world. There was also going to be, like, we need to secure it. There's still lots of military personnel and a threat on the ocean turtle. Yes, we've dealt with the action in the underworld, but there's still a lot that needs to be dealt with here. So while this was an episode where we didn't really get to see a lot of our sort of core cast that much, it more did focus on Kikuoka, Rinko, and Higa, as well as Kaiba, of course. But we did get Asuna and Kirito's stuff at the sort of start with Asuna and then at the end with Asuna and Kirito. So that was good to sort of show that, because of course they're not going to go into this giant arc that covers 200 years of time that Kirito and Asuna spent in the underworld. That will be addressed as we go forward, but for the most part, they are not showing us particularly any of that time. So instead, they're showing us sort of the emotion of Kirito and Asuna going into that together, knowing that they are going to spend a huge amount of time in here, sort of, unchanging and so on. So, big moment, but it really worked. And especially as the after credit scene, I like that they almost had you wait this whole episode, and then finally you find out that yes, Asuna made the decision to stay here. She wasn't going to leave Kirito behind, which makes complete sense after the effort that she went through to sort of get on board the ocean turtle, then diving into the game. Of course she was going to make this decision. That was always going to be the way it was. And they accept that, okay, it'll be sad for everyone else, kind of, knowing that they're sort of trapped in here for a certain amount of time. But once they remember everyone, then it's fine. They know that once they don't forget about Alice or all their other friends, then it will be fine. Because for them, this time together, it's going to be fine. Even if it is 200 years, if it's 1,000 years, it doesn't matter, because they're there together. That Kirito, if he had to do this alone, might have broken down a bit, but because Asuna is there, they can both be strong together. And I think that was just a really nice way to do it. Yes, I do wish they had potentially included a Kirito Asuna kiss there at the end, just because they didn't show it when it probably should have been shown in a previous episode, and this felt like a pretty strong opportunity to do it. I think once they do some sort of other Kirito Asuna centric, romance scene before the series kind of comes to an end, I think I'm pretty okay with it. But I think there's definitely that sense of just are they holding back on a kiss for whatever reason? I'm not really sure, but either way, I know it's something that people really want to see, and I think I'd like to see it as well. But yeah, the rest of the episode, a lot happens in this for sure. So Gabriel Miller, let's address Gabriel Miller. So I was talking in the last episode about I hope they don't skip this scene where we address what exactly happened to Gabriel Miller, because of course he is defeated, so he should have woken up in the real world, because it was sort of the defeat happened sort of under transition of the going between worlds in a way. So I guess he should have woken up, but as we see here, it's his spirit, his soul basically, outside of his body, and he looks down and is what's going on here? And in a way, this is what he's always wanted, to see people's souls, to absorb them. That's what he is, that's what he is about. And he's just terrified at this experience. And then what really makes the scene is that they come back to sort of with his character arc, where this sort of fascination started, which was with Alicia in the past, and the fact that he killed her, and that was sort of when he had his first experience in a way of seeing someone's soul. And so it's very fitting that Alicia is the one to sort of drag him away into this eternity, that he's dead here. Now, of course, how does he get into this situation? This is basically a very specific situation caused because of the nature of the way Kirito defeated him. Kirito was, of course, empowered by basically part of the incarnation of basically everyone in the underworld. So it was an attack with like an aspect of like everyone's soul in it. And he, of course, defeated him. So that's how you get into this situation where it seems like his sort of soul is separate here. And they didn't include the line of dialogue that is in the book that I think would have helped to kind of properly explain all of this. But I think Kirito did mention it during their fight that, I think it was Yu-Gi-Oh! I think who might have actually been the one to mention it. Like, Gabriel Miller doesn't understand people's emotions, and that he so badly doesn't understand fear that he's like afraid of feeling afraid. And so in this moment where his past comes back to haunt him, he is truly afraid because he has no control. He doesn't know what's happening, as he is just, taken away by Alicia here. Like, that finally sort of he is a soul in this scene, but it's not at all what he wanted. And it just highlights that this was this character who deep down was nothing, and because he fundamentally didn't get people and went so far down the path of just caring about the sort of technical detail of souls, this is almost the perfect fate for him to almost like have to be tormented by sort of the people he killed, trying to like investigate what is a human soul. Where, like, obviously the contrast is that he was just in a game where everyone within that game was an actual artificial soul, and he cared so little for the people there that he just kind of had them die. And that's meant to be, I suppose, a fitting end for this villain. Was he the most developed villain in SAO? No. But I think that's why it was good that we sort of did have a dual villain throughout this, at least, War of the Underworld side of the arc, with Gabriel Miller and Vizago. That with Vizago you have the personal investment from the characters, why they care about him, why he cares about them. And then with Gabriel Miller, it's more of just, he has this specific idea about souls and the way his sort of personality affects the sort of power system and how it works in the game with Incarnation. He fit in that sense as this overall villain, but a villain who our heroes didn't particularly have much attachment to. So I think they actually did a decent job at showing both sides of that. But yeah, glad they showed that Gabriel Miller scene. Then let's get to the Vizago scene, because this is very, very interesting in that even light novel readers don't really know the full answer to what's going on here. So when Critter goes down to look at them, he of course sees Gabriel Miller dead. Like, he is so, like, his body is just in this like awful position, like his eyes are like almost popping out of his head and stuff like that. Like, the idea is almost that like he's almost broken his fingers, and such is the extent to which he's like tensing his hands when he's meant to be deep diving into a game. So they showed that pretty well. But then when he looks over at Vizago's hair is a different color. He looks like ancient. That the amount of time that they're saying has passed has actually passed for him. And interestingly, of course, visually here they show that he checks Gabriel Miller's pulse, but he just assumes Vizago is dead, which is an interesting point given that later on it'll be noted that where's Vizago's body? It's nowhere to be found. They didn't see it. They in that room didn't have any other bodies with them to take. So Vizago's gone somewhere, kind of implying that is he going to pop up again somewhere else as a villain. That what Kirito did to him, which again was trapping him in the game as a tree. So he's not going to feel anything, but he is still an object within the game. Obviously, he is still in the game under the time acceleration, so the idea is that he's going to spend 200 years there as well. But then there's the question of, like, did they, like, forcibly, like, remove him from the soul translator, thinking he was dead, and that might have done some damage to him? Or, because, like, such a long amount of time passes for him in the game, did something happen in the game that sort of freed him to a degree. But again, I don't think that quite fits. So, the fact that Kirito and Asuna are going to be okay, I think tells you that, like, okay, it makes sense how he is going to be okay, but he is going to suffer for what he went through. But again, we don't know the specifics of that. But I actually really like that. I like that our kind of core villain here, Gabriel Miller, is the one who gets killed off. But Vizago, who is this kind of like forever presence within the story, is going to continue, even though like he basically suffered a defeat by Asuna and by Kirito, and he's still going. And given that the next arc, Unital Ring, seemingly is the last arc of SAO, that's going to be very interesting how they fully decide to end this. But that's just some sort of speculation into the future. For now, it's just meant to be a bit of a mystery as to how exactly he's managed to move or anything like that. Because when we see him again, he is going to be this even more broken character, because he spent the same amount of time that Kirito and Asuna did basically in the game, but still unable to feel anything. And that, like, even though he's diving into the game, he's just a tree. The only thing basically he's going to feel is if people try to chop him down. Other than that, like, he doesn't have any senses or anything like that. And it's hundreds of years. So we're going to see this very broken Vizago, I suppose, if we ever do see him again. And that's very interesting to consider. As for the rest of the episode, I suppose it mainly focused around, Kikuoka getting to really kind of showcase himself, be a little bit of an action hero here. We get a gunfight where he takes out one of Miller's men, but he takes a wound to the side, which he lies about to Higa. And then as he goes down to help with the whole engine situation that's happening, it's revealed that, no, he actually did take it in the side. It wasn't just in the bulletproof vest. So, it's just him putting himself on the line, basically for, Kirito, for this whole project, that his view on things has changed in all of this. So it's his sort of attempt to redeem himself, given that, again, like, you almost forget, but that the whole idea here is that Kikuoka is working for the military. He, at the start of this arc, supports the idea of Project Alicization being to create AIs for military use, which is not at all what Kirito and Asuna especially want. And now that sort of ideal has been passed on to Rinko, and it's basically also sort of Kaiba's ideal as well, because that's probably like the really big thing in this episode, is that we sort of get the return of Kaiba, because obviously it was very heavily implied, we basically know it's true, that he basically uploaded his mind into the internet, or whatever way you want to specify it. And so here he is taking control of Neemon, the robot, and being the one to stop the attack on the engine, because Critter basically decides that, okay, we have to execute the plan if it went wrong, which is that if we can't have Alice, no one can. Blow up the ocean turtle. So a huge threat here as they attempt to blow up the kind of water reactor at the bottom of the ocean turtle with plastic explosives. So the idea is that needs to be stopped. And so Kaiba gets to be also a bit of a hero here. And they again establish the relationship with Rinko. There's still a lot of emotion there based on what happened before. It also sort of clarifies to us that dream she had back in like episode 6 of the first half of Alicization was actually real. When she like sort of woke up and was sort of drowsy and thought she heard Kaiba talking to her, I guess it was actually Kaiba talking to her, which is very interesting, that like he has been here as like a presence on the ocean turtle like this entire time, and this is him choosing to act, and we're going to see a little bit more of him, I suppose, as we go forward as well. So very interesting again, because sort of like Vizago, even though it seems like he fulfills his destiny, like he takes a lot of gunshot wounds, but just as it seems like, oh, he's too badly damaged, it's all disconnected, he has no power, it activates again after Rinko sort of calls out to him. And this is, I suppose, meant to be sort of Kaiba's moment. That is like him getting a little bit of a hero moment, like kind of Kirito does when he defeated Kaiba back at the end of the first arc. Of his hit points were at 0, but he still managed to win. And this is, there's no connection here to the power, but somehow, basically, the idea is through the strength of, you know, the soul, will, and so on, that he gets it going as well. And it's a bit of like real world incarnation sort of type thing happening, is almost the interpretation you're meant to have. So he stops that plastic explosive from going off, but it seems like that is the last thing that he can do with the robot. But kind of like Vizago, when they cut back to him later on, they note that, where's the robot gone? Like, you know, he's not here. So something else is going to happen with Kaiba. So that's another fun setup of just the Kaiba mystery. And again, like, Kaiba has played a role in the story in most of the arcs, with the idea of like, he created SAO and the whole like VR MMO, like it's sort of like his genre basically. The Seed is his whole idea. There was the whole bit at the end of the ALO arc with him. He's the one who kind of came up with the plans for the Metacuboid. The Seed ultimately basically leads to sort of the main concept behind sort of Alicization, and the idea of within a game world creating another form of life. Given that like Kaiba's main sort of philosophy is that he believes the real world and the virtual world should be considered like somewhat equal, and they should be forever connected. There shouldn't be this view that they are just this inherently separate thing, but that they can work together. And obviously that has sort of become the core philosophy of, say, Kirito and Asuna, especially because, of course, Yui is their daughter, and they view her as their real daughter, even though she only sort of exists to a degree in the virtual world. But we've seen their attempts to sort of bring her into the physical world, the real world, like we saw, you know, with the way they had Yuki go around the school in the Sleeping Nights arc. So there's a lot of these great, I think, connections that come together so nicely here. And again, it's very fitting in the end that Kirito and Asuna are fighting so hard for Alice as, you know, this being who is representing this new form of being. She is a human, but an artificial human. And because of their experiences in the underworld, they know that she is just as real as anyone else. It's just that in the physical world, how is she going to be represented? Because right now, as we saw at the start of this episode, she is just a light cube. But what are they going to put that light cube in? The reason the robot stuff is here is because they've also been researching how do we then utilize these artificial AIs, artificial flux lights. You have to have bodies for them, and obviously with the military the idea was for drone strikes, but they're also researching the idea of like basically making soldiers, combatants out of them. So the question is, can you make more realistic robot bodies? And we're going to see stuff about that in the final 2 episodes of the arc. But yeah, that is most of the episode. We got a quick reference to like they find the body of Yanai, confirming that he is in fact dead. So that's kind of what a lot of this episode was. It was like, okay, this character is dead. This character's probably still out there. This character's probably still out there, but this character's dead. There was a lot of that in this episode. But yeah, I think the Kaiba stuff definitely worked. I really appreciated that. Like, this was a big moment. This is him getting to really sort of protect the future of like his ideals, which is sort of Alice, and Asuna sort of passing that dream onto Rinko, to Alice is a good person, look after her in this world, don't let her be misused for the military, treat her as like a living being basically. I definitely like that, and that you also got that idea of Kaiba passing on his goals and dreams to Rinko as well. So it places more importance on her as a character and her introduction here as well, that in terms of the sort of scientist sort of perspective, it's now her who was sort of involved in the whole SAO situation that we obviously found out about in the first half of the arc, and here is her redeeming herself as well for her involvement there through being the one to sort of look after Alice going forward. So I think that all came together really, really nicely. But good episode for a lot of these characters, bringing back that stuff with Rinko. Higa has got his chances to shine as like a bit of a hero as well, and also Kikuoka as well, given that we haven't had the strongest opinions of him since the reveal during this arc, and he kind of redeemed himself here. The same with even just the bodyguard guy, what's his name, Nakanishi, I think it was, just seeing him being willing to sort of make the sacrifice when it came down to it, but that's where Kaiba came in. So, I think that's most of what I want to say about this episode. After this, I think we're, I suppose, pretty much into the epilogue, and so I believe there is 2 episodes left, and I think 2 episodes should be just about enough time to do the epilogue, since there's quite a bit to cover. Again, it's nearly half of volume 18 is the epilogue, so there is a good amount of material to get through here, in that, like, we have to resolve things with Alice, we have to address what's happening with Kirito and Asuna, because this episode does end basically with the idea that, Higa just finished shutting off the soul translators, so they've now done their 200 years in the underworld, which has only been like a handful of minutes in the real world, but they have done that the whole time. What impact has that had on their bodies? Are they going to wake up immediately? How much danger are they in? Because again, the important technical note here is that their bodies can live for roughly 100 years, but their souls can live for roughly double that, so 200 years. And they've done that plus the life they've already lived, so they are at risk here. It's not like a guaranteed death, because of course, the idea is that this is like cutting edge research. They don't know the full scope of souls, especially, I suppose, real ones compared to like the artificial ones, but still, a lot of interesting stuff to get through, as well as like, wow, like they have to address the fact that Kirito and Asuna have effectively like experienced like 2 whole lifetimes coming out of this, so they definitely have a lot of interesting points to address on that side of things. But they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.